A wave of Russian missile strikes on cities across Ukraine has sparked international outrage. The most widespread bombardment since the beginning of the war is in retaliation for Saturday's explosion on a bridge connecting Russia with occupied Crimea. Take a look at this. Well, this girl was walking past Taras Shevchenko National University in a cultural district of Kyiv. She thankfully survived a near miss, but others were not so fortunate. This footage was captured close to the university as Ukrainian emergency services responded to the wounded. So far, 11 dead have been reported, 64 were wounded. Well, the district is also home to this playground. It and several museums, galleries and government buildings were damaged in the explosion. It is the first time that Moscow has targeted downtown Kyiv since the start of the war. The BBC has been speaking to residents near the blast site.
Oh, it's horrible. This is our life. And just now, I don't know, an abyss has opened up in our lives. It's terrible.
Well, the strikes in Kyiv began at 8 o'clock local time this morning. The first appeared to land in the direction of the so-called Glass Bridge. It's a Kyiv tourist attraction. This CCTV captures the bridge taking a direct hit. The BBC's Kyiv correspondent was reporting live at the time about Russia's potential response to the Kerch Bridge explosion.
So the fear is that this could trigger a very strong Russian response. We saw yesterday that a residential area of the city of Zaporizhia, a major city in the south of the country, very close to the front lines, was hit. More than a dozen.
Well, Kyiv was not alone. Zaporizhia, a city close to the front, was heavily targeted on Sunday. This 9-storey apartment block was partially destroyed. 5 other residential buildings were levelled and damaged, many more. Another 13 people were reported killed there. 87 were injured, including 10 children. In Dnipro, a bus driver and several passengers, they were injured when a missile struck just ahead of a city bus. The major western city of Lviv was struck too. Their local officials report that critical infrastructure, including power and water facilities, were targeted.
They will do, and they have already targeted on critical infrastructure in order to city to be without electricity, without water supply. Today we partly prepared because we use diesel generators, but of course, so we have to restart electricity in our city, and so in this work engage a lot of services in one moment, so all state services, all municipal services, all private services.
Well, cities across Ukraine were hit in the largest simultaneous barrage since the early months of the war. Cities across the country were targeted with specific focus on energy infrastructure. Power outages were reported in the frontline regions of Kharkiv and Sumy, and in 3 key regions in the west. Those areas have hosted significant numbers of refugees. Well, the Ukrainian Ministry of Energy has said it will now have to stop supplying electricity to the EU from tomorrow due to today's missile strikes. Well, according to the Ukrainian Air Defence, 83 missiles were fired by the Russian military against Ukrainian cities. It claims just over half were intercepted before reaching their targets. Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a defiant message.
This morning is difficult. We are dealing with terrorists. Dozens of missiles, Iranian drones. They have 2 targets, the energy facilities throughout the country. They want panic and chaos. They want to destroy our energy system. They are hopeless. The second target is people. Such a time, such goals were specially chosen to cause as much damage as possible. But we are Ukrainians. We help each other. We believe in ourselves. We restore everything that is destroyed.
Well, according to the man who ordered the strikes, they will not be the last if Ukraine launches further attacks against what he claims is Russian territory. This shows the moment last week when an explosion struck the strategic Kerch Bridge, the only link connecting occupied Crimea and Russia. Kyiv has not taken responsibility for that attack, but Western intelligence experts say Ukrainian sabotage operation is a clear possibility. Well, Mr. Putin pointed the finger clearly at Kyiv. He's also claimed Russia's strikes targeted purely strategic objectives.
Оставлять без ответа преступления подобного рода.
It is simply impossible to leave crimes of this kind unanswered. This morning, in line with suggestions given by the Defence Ministry and in accordance with the Russian General Staff's plan, a mass strike was launched with long-range, high-precision air, sea and land-based weapons against Ukraine's energy facilities, military commands and communications facilities. If attempts to carry out acts of terrorism on our territory continue, Russia's response will be harsh, and its scale will respond to that of the threat made against the Russian Federation. No one should be in any doubt about that.
Well, the attack on Ukraine has drawn widespread condemnation from the international community. The President of the European Commission, that's Ursula von der Leyen, says she's shocked and appalled by the vicious attacks on Ukrainian cities, adding that Putin's Russia has again shown the world what it stands for: brutality and terror. Meanwhile, the head of NATO has tweeted about what he describes as horrific and indiscriminate attacks and says the military alliance will continue supporting the brave Ukrainian people as long as it takes. Well, analysts have compared these Russian tactics to the bombing of urban centres during World War II. Those were designed to break morale of people there. Our World Affairs editor John Simpson has been assessing their effectiveness.
It simply doesn't work. Sure, it does a lot of damage to the power and water supplies, and we've been told that by this evening some of those will be mended, perhaps most of them will be mended, and we'll get the power and the water coming back again. So in terms of the damage it's done, it's pretty minimal, even though there has been an awful lot of damage. But what really happens always is that people's morale rises, and it just makes Ukrainians absolutely determined to keep on fighting.
Well, that determination clear. Another moment for the people of Ukraine to show their resilience. Here, civilians sheltering in a Kyiv metro station to keep up morale were singing a Ukrainian folk song. Well, Alexander Miroshnichenko is a volunteer first responder. I spoke to him earlier as he described the scene in the capital, Kyiv.
I was just at my apartment spending time with my friends when we heard first explosions. And then we decided to move to the center of Kyiv to assist with casualties, because we understand that it will be massive casualty. And when we arrived to the first spot, which was actually the university where my friend studied, so it was hit near the university, and there were probably died people and massive casualties, around 10 to 15 people. And then we decided to move straight to the park, which is pretty safe zone, and then we heard another explosion, which it was the hit of the civilian business center, the absolute civilian spot, and we rapidly ran there and saw really massive casualty. Around 20 to 30 people were laying there, and it was pretty hard casualties. So it's cut off legs, hands, shrapnel wounds. It was pretty hard for us to work with that amount of people who was actually casualties by the missile. And the hardest part, that mostly of them, there was ladies, and the ladies are 55 plus years old. So this were civilians who were just walking around the city and were so close to die because of just Russian terrorist state decided to throw the missile in the center of Kyiv, and non-military object. So yeah, it was pretty hard. This is civilian. When they told me that they moved from Donetsk and Luhansk 2 days ago just to survive, because their places where they used to live before are damaged and exploded totally, unfortunately. And they say that we came to Kyiv to feel ourselves more safe, and we were close to die, if you will not save us. So that's what we saw.
Yeah, and Alexander, everything you've told me there suggests that these were not in any way military targets. These were civilian populations, they were playgrounds, they were business centres, they were part of the university. Tell us a little bit about the sites themselves that seemingly were targeted here?
Yeah, the first one is university. So this is university where students, and I think the closest military object from there is probably 15 minutes by car. Yeah, and this hit was straight on the middle of the road where only civilians were driving, and absolutely no military object. The second hit, this is the business center. I remember some companies, like worldwide companies, offices are there, and we came there, and we've not seen any military people there. Any.
Yeah.
Only later when people from military start coming there to work with the casualties and to save people, yeah, then we saw a couple of people from military, but mostly people who were helping the civilian people.